Well, good evening, Manchester. It is Wednesday, July 12th. Wednesday means it's time for the Progress Report. You may have noticed that I am not Bob Backus. Our usual star of the show and regular host Bob Backus is away on a fact-finding mission through the south of the United States. He'll be back next week, and we wish him the best of luck on that trip. So I'm filling in the big chair for Bob. I hope that doesn't scare too many of you away, because we're going to still have a great show. We've got a great guest. We're going to be talking with Alderman Pat Long shortly. And we'd encourage all of our viewers to call in, especially on a day when Bob's not around. I love phone calls because it helps me get through the show. 640-3091 is the number, and we'd love to hear from you, whether you agree or disagree. As long as you're respectful, we'd love to have a conversation with you. But before we get started, I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't start off with the following, and I'm going to line it up this way. You know, we here at the Progress Report celebrate the city of Manchester. We think, and I personally think, the city of Manchester is a truly great city and has been throughout its history. And the thing that's made Manchester a great city has always been its people. Sure, we have a great location. We've got a wonderful river right at the falls that provided the power that our mills needed, but it was the people who took advantage of those particular situations and who have always, throughout this city's history, made it a great city. When the city fell down, when the mills closed, people stepped up. Great men, great women stepped up to fill the void, to fill the gap, and to keep this city going. And to this day, this city has problems, but it is great, and it has great things to offer to families and visitors and students and everyone who visits, because there are great people working behind the scenes, volunteering, putting in the hours, putting in the hard work to make this city a great city, and very often their work goes unsung. One of the giants of that group of people who work behind the scenes tirelessly, year in and year out, was C. Arthur Soucy, who passed away earlier this week. The city has suffered a great loss with the passing of this great man. In conversation the past couple days, I can't help but refer to him as a lion of Manchester. I am not going to try to recount the many great things he did, the many boards he sat upon, all the volunteer work he did, other than to say that for all the time I knew him, he was a gentleman. He was a wonderful friend, and we all know the many years he put in, whether it was as a 26-year-old alderman, founding the Young Democrats of New Hampshire, working with the Manchester City Democratic Committee, working as a water commissioner, working as a Parks and Recreation commissioner. He was everywhere and everything, and we certainly do mourn his loss, and our condolences go out to his family, his daughter Donna, and the rest of his family. And I hope you'll join me in mourning the loss of C. Arthur Soucy, and maybe keep him in your thoughts and prayers. Moving on to that, we have one more bit of business to take care of. Usually Bob introduces this, but I'll introduce myself today. We have a somewhat regular feature that we've been running here on the Progress Report starting this year. It's called the POTUS Report on the Progress Report, and in that feature we've been trying to provide information about what's going on down in the White House with the new president. Obviously, I think it's clear that our position is that we don't approve of what's going on down there, and we've tried to highlight things that may not be in the mainstream media, maybe on the sidelines. There's been a lot going on, and we've tried to point out things that you might not otherwise have heard. But this week we're going right at it. We're going to go right into the middle of the big story. It's not yet clear, but authorities may have found the smoking gun in the Trump-Russia scandal. Like the loaded pistol that fell onto the hearing room floor from the waistband of New Hampshire Republican Representative Carolyn Halstead at the beginning of a hearing on full-day kindergarten, or the loaded handgun that fell from the shoulder holster of convicted former Republican State Representative Kyle Tasker at the start of a House Public Safety Committee hearing, Donald Trump Jr. has apparently dropped the smoking gun used in the Russian attack on American democracy. That's pretty good, huh? I kind of like that.
Yes.
It comes in the form of a tweet. Donald Trump Jr. issued this tweet himself, and it revealed at least part of an email chain, which clearly shows that high officials of the Trump campaign were offered a meeting with a Russian government lawyer to receive information damaging to the Clinton campaign. Moreover, it expressly states that the Russian government wanted to influence the election in favor of Trump. Now, keep in mind, they've been denying any connection. It's a hoax, it's a witch hunt, but we have emails now to Donald Trump Jr. saying that this is what it is. And worse yet, as the new evidence shows, Mr. Trump has admitted, too, that he, Jared Kushner, and Paul Manafort, three highest-ranking Trump campaign officials at the time, actually took the meeting. Now, they defend themselves in a variety of very interesting ways. They've been using this old, we're new at this defense for quite some time, and more truthfully, it's the we're idiots defense. We don't know what we're doing. But having lied numerous times on their security clearance applications about whether or not they ever had these meetings, are they really saying that they have not yet learned to tell the truth and need more practice? I'm not sure. Ancillary to that defense, and in defense to the lying thing, they've been saying, I forgot. Sure they did. I forgot calling in Jared and Paul for a meeting with a beautiful Russian lawyer who just flew in from Moscow to assist our campaign and who couldn't speak a word of English and brought her own translator. And I forgot attending that meeting. Such things are so common that it's very easy to forget that. But now I can certainly remember the details, and I swear we never got any good information. That's ridiculous. And then there's the other defense. We didn't get anything good. By that logic, a gang of bad guys who conspired and robbed a bank would be innocent if they were handed a bag of phony money. And that's the POTUS report on the progress report for this week. If you'd like to comment, give us a call, 640-3091. But in all seriousness, folks, we really got some interesting information this week, and maybe as the show goes on, we'll talk a little bit more about it. But let's get finished with me and come over to our guest, Alderman Pat Long, State Representative Pat Long, a regular guest on the show. Thank you very much for coming in tonight. I appreciate it.
Mike. I'm glad I was able to make it.
Me too, because otherwise it would be all me all night, and that would be boring to the viewers. So you're certainly going to make the show a lot better. We got a lot to talk about in local politics. State politics kind of died down a little bit. We're in a little bit of a lull, but maybe we can talk about that. And certainly there's plenty to talk about on the national level. But, Pat, before we get started, what we usually try to do, and it goes to kind of what I was starting off with, that it's the people that make the difference in everything that we're talking about here. And so we try to personalize our guests. Now, you've been on the show a whole bunch of times, and it's been a long time since we've gone back and talked about your background, your connection to Manchester.
Sure.
You know, what you did for a living, what brought you to politics, that kind of thing. So I know you've probably repeated it a million times, but could you give us one more version?
Sure.
So folks who might not know you can get a better idea.
Yeah, prior to doing that, though, C. Arthur Soucy, I think of selflessness when I think of that man. And that's what makes a good leader in our community. So my history, I was born and raised in Manchester. 3 years old, I was a ward of the state. So I was in orphanages, couple foster homes. Ended up being on my own at 16 with my brother. I missed graduating from high school at West High School by a half a credit. I ended up going to Manchester Adult Education, which was at Central at the time. Got my high school diploma. I didn't get a GED, it was a diploma. And became an iron worker at the age of 22. Worked iron till 2009, 31 years. I was the business manager. That's when I got the first taste of politics. Being a business manager in a union is a little bit of being a priest, being a psychologist, being a
little lobbyist.
Yeah. So it certainly set me up for what I expected to get as an alderman. So I won my first election in 2005. And I'd served a term, then I lost my second term, and I've been serving ever since. So it's been 9.5 years now. The end of this term will be 10 years. I enjoy it. I'm not one that thinks I could save the world, but I could certainly save one person's world at a time, and that's how I look forward to doing this kind of work, both at the state level and on the aldermanic level.
Yeah, well, I mean, the city work wasn't enough. You also ran for state representative representing the downtown,
yeah.
residents of downtown.
Yeah.
It's a compact little ward, but
It is.
gets well represented.
Got a lot
by
of people.
yourself and
I
Concord.
appreciate that.
And you've kind of risen and grown into the job. I mean, right now you're on the board of mayor and aldermen. You're the vice chair, which
Actually, I'm the chair.
chairman
we
of
have
the
a
board.
chairman
Yeah.
of the board. Yeah.
I was mixing up the titles with the school board.
School
has
has
the
a vice
which
chair,
is,
right? Yeah.
which is no small task. You have all your ward alderman duties, but then you have to really engage in some politics. You've got to bring people along. You've got to.
That's right.
It's you don't have a big staff. But you're also the whip. You've got to count votes. You've got to know
Right.
where things are
Exactly.
going and when to bring them up. So
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, part of being a politician in my mind is to be able to have the respect and the confidence in your colleagues, because that's how you get things accomplished. If I'm downing my colleagues, I don't expect they're ever going to vote with me on an initiative I think moves the city of Manchester forward. So that's all part of it is being able to deliver, and in that delivery you need to have your colleagues respecting you and be able to garner their votes.
And
That's
that's
a big part of
that's
that.
how get thing. They say politics is the art of the possible, and that's how
Exactly.
you make things possible. It's by
Exactly. I
doing
mean,
the
at the
political
city
work.
level, compared to the state level is R&D. It's Republican and Democrat at the state level. The city level is more on best interest of Manchester.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we may agree on a best interest. We may not agree on how to set the policy for that, but we could work that out. That's the art of moving Manchester
Now,
forward.
is that because there's this myth of nonpartisan elections in our municipal elections, and there's good reason for that because the Hatch Act doesn't allow good people to run in partisan elections.
Right.
By opening it up this way, there are more people that are able to run for positions within the city, and there's good reason for that. But does that impact the difference between your experience at the state level and the city level, or is it pretty much still party politics, but just a different mindset? of the
Yeah, I
people in
don't.
play?
Very few times I'd see party politics at the city level. Is there some? Yeah, there are. But like I said, it's you're more defined at a local level. The more local you go, the more defined you are. It's not a matter of, when I get elected, I'm asking people to allow me to serve them. So when I get elected, I'm serving the people. So it's not my idea or my way that I think's the best way. It's a collective voice of the people in your ward who want a particular thing or don't want a particular thing. And that's who I'll listen to, and that's what I'll bring to the table.
So if someone calls you and they're a Republican, it's still important that you get their potholes filled.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because whether you're a
That's the
Democrat or
job.
Republican, a pothole's a pothole.
Mm-hmm.
You're right.
Well, that's a good point. It's too bad you couldn't bring some of that up to Concord, but of course there's more cats to be herded up there than a board of
Exactly.
14.
Yeah.
so
424 to
that makes a big
14
difference.
people. You're right.
Well, look, let's turn a little bit to what's been going on in the city. We did get through a budget,
We did.
and the budget was almost immediately tested.
It
And
was.
I have to say that something that you happened to do was fortunately there to solve a real problem.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah,
you don't
it's-
have to pat yourself on the back. I'll do that for you.
Yeah.
But,
No. Well,
you put that
again,
money in contingency.
again, it wasn't. Again, it needed 10 people. So it's not something that I did alone. It's not anything that anybody does. I mean,
I
the
don't
mayor,
mean
the
to
mayor may
embarrass you.
claim
Fair enough.
something,
Fair
but the bottom line is the board of aldermen that also needs to take a vote.
But I remember I saw the meeting, and
it's a
you
collaborative thing.
argued very forcefully as to where it should go, why it should go there.
Right.
You took the lead on that particular issue. At least that was my perception. And of course, you couldn't have done it without support.
Right.
But if that support hadn't had the kind of leadership that you provided, would it have been enough? So
I mean, the
guess it
toughest
takes
thing
both.
with 13 aldermen since Alderman Pappas resigned is you need 10 votes, and that's very difficult to do. So
Yeah, that's-
you hope you got them. You do all your homework prior to getting to to the meeting and hope that those 10 votes are still 10 votes, and sometimes things change. So I was having a hard time adding certain things. For example, we got some new radios. It's $150,000 a year for warranty. So it was split up into departments. You know, the fire, you got so many radios, that's 40+ thousand a year. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to bring the 150,000 to the table. Let's vote for this now. They don't have to worry about it. They just worry about their budget, severance, making their payrolls. But the more things that were added, it was hard to keep 10 people. Mm-hmm. So the idea was, you know what, let's just put everything in contingency, and we'll nickel and dime this as we go throughout the year. One is the Municipal Association. It's a $27,000 association fee. I understand where people say, do we need that? Personally, and being in the State House, I believe we do need that, because prior, when we weren't involved with them, I sit on their board right now, and there's about 26 of us. I'm the only representative from cities. So the towns will do initiatives when we weren't involved,
Yep.
and it wasn't helping us. It was
Yep.
helping the towns.
Yep.
So we need to be at the table at the State House, and they have a lot of respect at the State House.
And what the city was doing, they were hiring their own people to oversee bills and pull out the ones that might affect Manchester, bring them to your attention.
Right, well,
Pretty
we-
rudimentary bill monitoring.
Well, we were paying half of the 27,000 just for somebody to identify a bill that may potentially be favorable or hurt the city of Manchester.
Just to identify it, not
Just to identify
not to
it.
adopt a policy,
Not
advocate,
the lobby,
nothing.
no. Just here's some bills that may affect you, good or bad. And we got enough people on the board. We got Alderman Herbert, we got Alderman Katsoutonis, we got Alderman Shaw, and myself that are sitting on that state reps. But still, as you know, I'm on Health and Human Service Committee. So I need to be at that committee. Your credibility is by attending every meeting
Oh,
and being a
absolutely, sure,
participant.
no.
You know, if you're not going to your committee meetings, you're not winning any friends. You're not able to bipartisanly negotiate a bill that'll be amenable to both sides. So I can't follow all the bills. Myself.
Right, and also, I mean, actually, to go and advocate for the city would pull you away from other things that you have to do in your own committee.
No,
And
exactly.
you really need to,
Exactly.
that is
Yep.
absolutely a fact.
Yeah.
So, we've gotten through the budget. Again, congratulations on the foresight to at least put this fund in there. Now, is it, by using it for the purpose it was used, to keep the fire station open in Ward 9, does that deplete its function as far as you were concerned for other matters? Is
No.
there still enough in there to take care of these, the warrants?
Well, there isn't enough in there. The way I presented the budget, there was 3.1 million that was going to be in there. Now there's 1 million and I want to say 70,000. Because we took the $2 million I wanted to take out of the Economic Development Fund. The Economic Development Fund wouldn't have hurt us as far as bond ratings because it's not the rainy day fund. And we anticipate in May that Denise with the Hackett Hill owes us $1.8 million.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that'll
that's finally going to come through.
that would have put it, that would have put some of it back in there. I looked at the history of the Economic Development Fund, and that was the $900,000 we gave for the baseball, to do the new field and all that at the Fisher Cats. And a lot of the other stuff was taken out of there that had nothing to do with the economic development, and you needed the 10 votes. So I wanted to take the $2 million out of there to give us the 3.1. So that we had 3.1, and that, even though that would have been tight, because we were told we needed $2 million for our health fund,
And
that's
the
going up.
That's the reserve for the self-insurance fund.
That's right. 1.2 for the severance is what we heard from with the fire department. I mean, every department is going to have that issue in their budget. 1.2 million there we needed. And I thought it was important with Dr. Vargas first coming on and haven't even been here for a year. Speaking with him, he articulated where that money was going. First time that has ever happened, and
Yeah, I
since
saw
I've been
that,
on there
yeah.
for 10 years.
He was very
And
specific.
for the last 3 years, I've been talking to the school committee members and not with administration, because the school committee members, in my opinion, should be held accountable, and are the ones with the final votes. I mean, the superintendent could say, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. Then he goes to the school committee meeting and they say, no, I want you to do A and B. So
And we've seen that.
we started, we started articulating that with the, well, once with this joint committee that they have set up, 3 aldermen and 3 school committee members, and having a conversation with committee member Beaudry, we're finally starting to get articulated what is it that they need, because it's once a year that the aldermen have the schools on their plate, and all we do is appropriate the money. So what we did was they got the 2 million, but it came out of contingency, so that left us with the 1.1 million or so in there. So eventually, we're going to have to find something somewhere. We got 13 contracts that we need to negotiate. A lot of them are coming to fruition now. They're ready to present to us. I don't feel that where we're going to get the money scenario is a fair negotiating. I think if somebody negotiates a contract and city side feels that it's fair, then we ought to ratify that contract, and they ought to get paid for it. So we are gonna, that $1 million is gonna go quick. So
Okay,
hopefully
but we'll check the revenue
hopefully
projections later, right?
No, exactly.
See how it
Right.
comes out.
Right.
Well, with that, we're going to take our first break. We'll do a quick regroup, come up with a topic to talk about for the second segment. Folks, please don't forget to call in, help us out a little bit, ask some questions you might have. Pat is great at, just giving you the straight answer. So if you have any questions about what's going on in the city, maybe the paving of Elm Street, that would be right in his neighborhood. That would be something to talk about too. Maybe we can get to that.
Sure.
It's 640-3091, but just give us a second to regroup, and we'll see you in just a few seconds. Welcome back, folks. Thanks for sticking with us over our little break. We've kind of screwed our heads back on straight. I'll speak for myself. I screwed my head back on straight, and we're ready to go for another 20-minute segment of the Progress Report. Don't forget, we'd love to have callers call in and bring us topics that might be on their mind. 640-3091 is the number. We'd love to hear your calls. We're here with Alderman Pat Long, and we're right now talking about things going on in the city. Right at the end of the last break, I randomly brought up the topic of Elm Street being repaved. That's a real major operation that we're going to do. It's something that I remember we've done it periodically in my lifetime. It's always a big deal. Sometimes we reconfigure the street a little bit. I
Right.
want to talk
Yep.
a little bit about the details of that. And that's all part of a big program that we so sorely needed that's been going on for a couple of years, and that's the complete resurfacing of a lot of the main
Right.
roads
Yeah.
in the city. And just in the interest of full disclosure, during the break I was complaining that my ward, Ward 8, has quite a few roads that could use some attention. So,
Right.
we'll
So
have to
I wanted to tell you what happened. Three years ago, I believe it was. We're in the third year of a 5-year, $3 million a year bonding scenario for infrastructure, for paving. So 3 years ago, or so, probably 4 years ago, the aldermen agreed that we used to get allocated an amount of money for paving. And we would call highway and say, yeah, I want Chestnut, I want Pearl Street between Chestnut
so
and
the
Pine.
aldermen kind of had
So
a
the
little fun that
aldermen,
they could
they're the ones-
determine where in their neighborhood we needed a patch or a rebuild or
Right.
something.
And
I
a
see.
lot of times it wasn't often the worst road. So
It was the call that
that's
came
right,
in more
exactly,
frequently.
exactly. So, so what we did 4 years ago is we decided to allow the highway department to make that call. First, they gave us a report, and there's a report online that you could go on.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think there's a road that's bad, look it up on that map on the highway, and it'll give you there's 4 determinations. One is bad.
in failure.
Well, one's actually it is failure. Then there's a poor. Then there's a fair. Then there's a good.
Yeah, I've seen that
So
map.
they're the ones that are determining what roads get done. And a lot of times people say, well, this road is horrible. Yeah, the road is horrible. However, it's a reconstruction. So in order to do the reconstruction, we're ripping up the road. It's not just a mill for
No, it's-
2-inch mill and
Absolutely.
put the asphalt down. It takes more. And they also have to time it with utilities. We're going to invest in doing a mile of a road, and then 6 months from now, the gas company's got to get in there and do some pipes. That's kind of defeating the purpose. So a lot of times when I get calls about, come on, there's nothing wrong. My road's pretty bad, and I agree. However, in August, utilities going in there.
And that may explain what's going on in my neighborhood and the neighborhoods around me, because there has
Right.
been a lot of utility work, a lot of rebuilding the underground infrastructure.
Right.
So you're right. It would have been foolish to repave those roads and then come in.
And you could get that information.
I'm
You
hopeful
know,
that
you-
maybe
you
when
could-
all this is done, maybe we'll get.
Well, I'd advise you just look at that map
Yeah.
and identify, because you may look at a road and it's listed as poor, and there's others that have failed, that are currently failing. So they're going to get to those first.
Which is good
So,
policy.
but I mean, the good news is we have the $1.5 million for downtown. That comes from your $5 that you pay for registering your car. There's a $5 charge that goes to the city by state statute for infrastructure. So that's that $1.5 million. It's about $500,000 a year. We had $500,000 in there, plus last year's $500,000, and we're anticipating $500,000 for this year. So that adds up to the
And
million
is
and a
that
half.
going to be the full reconstruction down to the gravel? Or are they
At
just-
some parts, they broke it up in blocks, and some. I mean, I know marching in the parade, there's a lot of areas where I'll see cobblestone.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking they got to rip some stuff out to take care of that. But they'll be doing that, and that'll be done this summer and spring.
Are
So
they going to reconfigure Elm Street? Because I know the
There's
last
no
round that they
reconfiguring.
did that, they had to put in the bump outs and all that other
right,
stuff.
yeah, no, this is just resurface. This is just putting asphalt and painting new lines.
So no
I've been talking.
medians or anything like that.
I've been talking to Kevin and Todd Connors with the Highway Department, Kevin Shepard, who's the director, on possibly getting some different colored crosswalk paintings just because of downtown. I know I went to one of their meetings and I wanted it to see if we could raise it a little bit. Not enough where the plow's going to hurt it, but just raise it enough so that when you go over it, you're going over a
little traffic
crosswalk.
calming.
Exactly. But they told me, we can do that. It's going to be expensive because what I didn't realize is you have to raise the sidewalks too, right? You just don't raise the road. You got to raise the sidewalks.
Oh, no
also.
kidding. Yeah, well,
yeah. So
there
that's
are
going to be
codes,
that's
yeah.
expensive. So, so we have that $1.5 million for that. We have the $3 million that we're on a 5-year plan, and we got a $3 million bonding for what we're going to do, and we also have a $3.4 million degradation that suit that we won.
I wanted to bring that up, and that's news that people might not have heard.
Right.
But for years and years, these utilities have been coming in, and they do have a right to maintain their infrastructure
They do.
within the roads.
They do.
But they've never made the roads as good as they were before they started. Never.
Correct. No, correct.
And, I mean, some are better than others, too. I mean, there's some that
Right.
are working right now that they just don't do a good job, and I don't think they're trying. But the city has been insisting for years that that these utilities ought to pay a cost, and that their customers, I guess, in the end, ought to pay a cost, so that the city taxpayers don't have
That's
to
right.
absorb that
That's right.
through front-end alignments.
But a lot of those utility work will be the potholes. Because they're not going to patch as we're going to patch. We're going to patch where we merge it in nice.
Yeah.
So it's not apt to pop back out. So that's been the issue. So we want to charge X amount of dollars per linear feet of rip-up when they rip off the road. And they fought us, and
cities
they
won.
lost.
It was a
the
combined-
cities,
several
won.
cities combined.
Concord, we were involved with Concord.
Yeah.
We got on their
Now,
suit.
was there an award of damages for past damage, or is this just going forward? You're allowed to collect a fee. How's the suit?
Well, no, this went back since the suit started. So we kept track.
okay.
That's why they owed us the 3.4.
I see.
We keep track, and going forward, they will be paying that price. So that we'll be able to go back over it and do it how we want to do it.
Well, that's good. I mean, you know.
So that's 3.4 there, so that's 6.4 plus the $1.5 million for Elm Street. And then there's also the state passed a budget. We got a highway block grant, which is $1.9 million to the highway department for infrastructure.
And now, does that include city roads, or is that only for like the state roads?
That's city roads.
Oh, really?
That's what our highway department gets
Oh, no
for
kidding.
infrastructure.
So it's not just 28 Willow Street and Maple
No,
Street?
it's not. It's not state roads. It's the city of Manchester roads. And in the budget, there's also an additional highway block grant, which is probably about 1.3 to 1.3 million dollars of additional money. There's a calculation that Mr. Shepherd's going to do to figure out how much that will be. So there's a significant amount of infrastructure funding coming to us. Now I know with me, I'm looking at a lot of my alleys, and they're rough. I'm bottoming out on my car, and I'm not going fast. I'm just going
not
slow,
trying.
and it's one of these.
Yeah.
So, hopefully that some of the ones that have failed, and there are several ones that have failed. I know in Ward 4, Ward 5. Maybe we could start getting some of them taken care of.
Now, how about going forward, though? You've gotten rid of the alderman's, I'm going to call it a slush fund, you know what I mean, where you had your maintenance, your spot maintenance. Is there a budget, or will there be budgets going forward for the highway department to maintain this brand-new road that they just repaved?
Right.
Or are we going to let that go to pieces before we come back?
Well, one of the positive things of allowing them to run the show is now they audited all the roads. We have 400 miles of roads. They audited all the roads, and they rated them. And when you resurface something, that's good for 8 years. So they know in 6 years I need to fill cracks, or even more, maybe 4 years, to make it last that 8 years. And then in 8 years, I need to do another resurfacing. Todd Connors would be good to get on the show. Because they explain it where,
It would be worth talking about.
I mean, first of all, they said
Interesting show.
in order to get this done within 5 years, they needed $6 million a year. And we're only, to get everything to fair, all our roads to fair, we needed this $6 million investment a year, which we're not doing. That's 3% of the tax rate, by the way.
Now, as
so-
as a lover of Manchester, that breaks my heart that we're not willing, and
Yeah.
I don't fault you, but as a city,
Well-
we're just not willing to have fair roads
No.
all around. You know what I mean?
No,
It seems to me
I
that
agree.
we
I
could do better.
I mean, there was a time when you knew you were in Manchester. I mean, all the roads were beautiful. You knew you were not in Nashua, or
Yeah.
you're not in
I remember
Concord. Manchester roads were good. So at least
I
now
believe that
we're
was during Bob Shaw, because I know Bob Shaw always said people like smooth roads. That was something
Yeah.
that as a mayor,
Yeah.
I remember him
I mean, you
saying
don't
all
you
the
don't
time.
think of the damage it does to your car.
Oh, I do.
You're paying $300 for whatever. So I agree. So at the very least, let's get all our roads to fair, or even poor. I mean, poor, you could fill cracks. You could maintain a poor road. You really could.
Yeah.
Where it's not that bad. It's not as bumpy. So we have good dollars coming forward for the infrastructure, which we probably not going to get all done now. There's just not enough.
Well, it seems like at least there's an effort, and it seemed to me, at least to my eye that going back a few years, the effort to maintain had kind of declined a little bit. So we
Right.
got to a point where I think we
Right.
really needed to take this drastic action. And
Well,
I'm
it's
just
never-
hoping that it doesn't just dry up and go away. I'm
Well, it's
hoping that-
never good going this far. It's never good, having roads that have failed. It's never good, because that's more expensive.
Yeah.
It's more expensive to fix that failed road than to fix a poor road.
And that's money that's taken away from maintenance of the other ones, and it's kind of,
No,
we
that's
hear
right.
the word death spiral,
right.
but you can get
Yeah.
into one if you don't keep your maintenance
Right.
up.
And we also have additional bridge money coming too. There's a bridge fund.
And what bridges will that affect, or is that going to hit all of
They're
them?
going to do. There's a couple of bridges that we need that we are going towards red listed bridges. Now, surprisingly to me, Manchester has like 25 or 35 bridges. That is Manchester's
Surprising, isn't
responsibility.
it?
And
The
I was
little
like,
ones over the
wow.
squag, and
Yeah, exactly.
You don't even know when you're driving
So
over them sometimes.
so those need maintenance, and those are our response. That's our
And
responsibility.
we've got some approaching red list. Is that so? That's,
Correct. Yeah. Well, we actually have some red listed.
Yeah,
so
that's always
this
been a pet peeve of mine. I
So
mean,
this money will be going towards, fixing that roads, and there's extra money in the budget for fixing those roads. So
Well, good. That's a step in the right direction.
is.
There's always the taxes versus maintenance and what the city needs. You know what I
Right.
mean? You don't want to you don't necessarily need a Cadillac, but I certainly think we can get to poor. You know?
no, I
If we're
agree.
setting that as our goal,
And I agree.
would hope we could at least achieve that.
It is unfortunate, but when you look at the way I look at things is the 10 votes. I'm not going to bring nothing to the table if I don't have 8 votes. Some of them will bring a proposal and they get 2 votes. To me, that's a waste of time. Bring something to the table where you at least consulted with your colleagues. And I'm not bringing nothing forward unless I got 8 votes to begin with. And then if there's a veto potential, then you need 10 votes. So I'll try to get the 10 votes if I can. So a lot of times you want to do something, but you don't have the votes there. I could do it just to let everybody know that I'm interested in doing
but
it. But
that's
to me, that's
grandstanding,
not.
isn't it?
It is. It's non-productive. So if I don't have at least the 8 votes, I'm not going to bring something forward.
Well, and you're taking a lead, I guess, from Mitch McConnell and the life that he's been leading over the past
know,
week.
huh?
He's had a hard time bringing things forward.
Blows me
corralling the votes,
blows
you
me
know.
away that they had 48 votes when Obama was president.
Well, we're getting on
to repeal.
Yeah, we're. This is a side road, but I'm going to go down it. There was a great Twitter exchange where I believe it was the White House, or it might have been the real Donald Trump Twitter, where he says, people are complaining that we're having a hard time passing our health plan. Where's Hillary's health plan? And within 3 minutes, she said, right here with a link. It's been out there for 5 years.
Right. And the effect of that too is also affects us locally.
Uncertainty.
I mean, state for sure, but locally, I mean, we're required to, starting next year, our welfare department is going to be a department. It's not going to be an
Right.
elected
Yes,
position.
that's the charter change.
And by statute, if they need money, you have to give them the money. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's not like, you got to lay off 20 people. No, if they say, we need $500,000 because there's because there's people with health problems that are not being covered anymore, and we need to get them prescriptions or whatever, we need to supply that. All these, CDBG money that we use a lot for revitalizing neighborhoods very successfully. All the nonprofits, it's going to be drawn off. Now, if we don't have the nonprofits that are taking care of our opiate crisis right now, we're going to be hurting. I mean, we got some good nonprofits stepping up to the plate right now. I just went to Serenity and took a tour of the Safe Station and Serenity's follow-up on Safe Station. And, they're doing a tough job. If all of a sudden there's a cut to this healthcare, That's gone.
We're
That's
coming up
gone.
on our next break, and I really would like to explore that, but I'm just reminded that on the show that was on the air just before ours, they were talking about how appalling it is that nonprofit organizations are getting money from government to provide services in cities and towns throughout New Hampshire. And of course, they have a different policy perspective on things, but
Sure.
where would we be without the nonprofits who take some money from the city, some money from the state, do their own fundraising, and not to mention volunteers. They bring in the volunteers that are providing the services.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
nothing. I mean, where would we be? We led the show off with a volunteer that has been an example in the city of
That's
Manchester
right.
for 60 years.
That's right. We don't.
Where would we be
We
without
don't
them?
count the financial value of a C. Arthur Susie. Here's a guy that did things for nothing. What price is that? That's a price.
Absolutely.
That's a price that
Absolutely.
we don't consider.
So, we really do have to keep that in mind. And not to mention, I mean, it's uncertainty in the cities. I know my company is beginning the process of negotiating next year's health care for the employees. What are we going to talk about? We don't even know.
No, that's right. Exactly.
It's very difficult. But it's time for our second break. We'll take a few minutes, regroup, and come back for the last segment. Folks, thanks for hanging in with us. We really wish you'd give us a call, 640-3091. I'm getting a little hoarse. I could use someone else coming in, saying a few words. We'd love it. Some questions. When we come back, I think I'd like to talk about a bit of a sore subject, and that would be the report from the Attorney General's office
Sure.
on our city solicitor's office. I don't want to be negative, but I do think that it's something that we ought to talk about.
Okay.
And folks, pay attention. If you have any questions about that, you can call in after the break. We will be right back. And we're back, folks, for the last segment of the Progress Report for July 12th, in 2017, just a couple days before Bastille Day. I'm here with Alderman and State Representative Pat Long, yours truly, Mike Farley. Bob Backus is away on a junket. I hope he's enjoying himself. He'll be back next week. And thank you for sticking with us, folks. And today we're talking about a lot of things, but kind of focusing on City of Manchester politics. And we're going to turn the last few minutes of the show to a pretty scathing report on a pretty sensitive topic that came down from the Attorney General's office. I don't know if you knew that there was any investigation even going on.
Yeah, I did.
But basically, the Attorney General's office came to the conclusion that the Manchester City Solicitor's office was not properly handling domestic violence cases, and maybe a little too quick to dismiss some of these cases.
Right.
And domestic violence is certainly an area where attention has been heightened over the past few years,
Absolutely.
rightfully so.
Yeah.
It's something that historically was kind of swept under the carpet a little bit. I think municipalities and authorities are taking a much more practical approach to this. They're not
Sure.
letting people get away with it. They're making arrests and letting the courts sort them out. And if that process isn't, our whole system of adversarial court proceedings requires aggressiveness on both sides.
Right.
And if one side is understaffed or overwhelmed or for whatever reason isn't as aggressive and cases are being dismissed, society as a whole suffers. You and I suffer, not to mention
Absolutely.
the victims, not to
That's
mention
right.
the victims and their families.
right.
Not and when we talk domestic violence, we're talking violence. So, Manchester has an issue with violent crime, and we may get to that topic too, because there was a report that came out on that. But I'm going to put that off. But this really shook up the city solicitor's office. The city attorney has indicated he will retire at the end of this month.
He's retired. He's retiring.
And he
put it in
took
his
away
papers,
his
and he
administrative duties.
he asked to be relieved from administrative duties.
Yeah,
Yep.
which, that's certainly a very honorable thing to do, I have to say, but it tells me that he considered this very serious, and, I guess to his credit, he did the honorable thing. And we're also, we're going to lose another member of the city attorney's office, Tom Clark.
Tom Arnold
No, I'm sorry, Tom Arnold. I get the two Toms
put in
mixed up
his
sometimes.
retirement also.
And
Yep.
I've known Tom for years. I mean, he's been a fair workhorse for the
Sure.
solicitor's office. He's been the city prosecutor, working morning and afternoon sessions in district court. I mean, this guy works hard. And then there was another kind of unrelated article about some defections from the county attorney's office, I guess due to just the nature of being a prosecutor.
Well,
and what you have to
by
deal with.
statute, the county attorney's office oversees the domestic violence. I'm not sure how that works. I know the AG hasn't spoken with them yet. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The AG's letter, which the alderman found out about in that non-public session, was it the 29th, I believe? Anyways,
The
it was a
date escapes me,
Thursday.
but about
Yeah, it was last Thursday, I thought.
Then that would have been the 29th.
Okay.
Well, no,
Oh, so
we're in July.
2 Thursdays ago.
It would be 2 Thursdays ago.
So anyways, I mean, when I read those letters, my only concern was with the victims. 74% had conditional null pros. I'm not an attorney, but that means you do this, and if you stay good, you're gonna be okay, type of thing.
Well, there are other much stronger ways to do that very
No,
thing.
I agree, but 74% of them were
Yeah.
conditionally non-pros. Now, I got emails from 2 victims. One of the victims didn't mind if I mentioned her name or anything. She was angry of the deal that she got. Hers was May of 16, so she's over the statute of limitation. The statute of limitation is a year since you signed the null pros agreement. So she was in May. This other one was in July. The one in May, her husband, who is now the ex-husband, he had to go online and do some anger management courses online, which she claims he never did, and she's still fearful today. The other one, very fearful, went through a lot, same process. There was a deal cut. But she doesn't want to bring this back up. And she was in July of 16, so she may be one of the refiles. The Attorney General told us to refile all those null pros that the statute of limitation hasn't run out. And that number's looking like about 45.
Are they are the people currently working? I mean, it takes time to draft the paperwork and get it
Right.
filed. Are they
They're
working
doing
day
that
and
now.
night to
That's correct.
get it in? So, I mean, it's not going to be 20 by the time all the paperwork is in.
No, that's right. That's right. I believe they've identified all the ones that they have to refile.
It's hard work. I got to
No,
respect
for
them
sure.
for that work. That's hard work.
So they've identified the ones that they have to refile. Emily Rice, Attorney Rice, is
that's
the
the new
appointment.
news. We have. Is she the interim or is she coming on?
She's the interim right
interim
now.
for now.
She's the interim right
Emily
now.
Gray Rice worked with the Attorney General's office for
Right.
years. She was a U.S. attorney.
Yep.
Top
Law firms.
absolutely phenomenal.
Or in Reno.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get a better quality person, administrator or prosecutor. She's
Right.
both.
Right.
So it's in a sorry kind of way, the city does end up, at the end of the situation, in a better position to prosecute criminals and protect victims by having her on board. I can't speak more highly.
I mean, the fact. I mean,
about
during a news conference, one of the stations asked her why I mean, it seems like she's overqualified to be a
absolutely. I mean,
solicitor.
it's a step
so
backwards for her.
why would you want to do this? And she said it's the challenge that I enjoy. And when I heard her say that, I'm like, this is who we need.
Perfect. This is what we need in the
she is
city
going to
of
take
Manchester.
pride in
Yeah.
putting us back on the track that we ought to be on. So I'm very excited to have her on there.
Yeah,
it was a good-
I join you in that. I knew that there had to be some changes. One, I did not think that any kind of replacement or any kind of plan would be in place this quickly. I have to say that
Right.
was really remarkable.
Right.
And it speaks well to everybody who was involved and had to step in and do something.
Right.
And number two, I never thought, especially on such short notice, that there would be someone so highly qualified
caliber.
available to come
Exactly.
in and
Exactly.
do this. So
Exactly.
I wish her all the best of luck and prosperity in her new job. I hope she really whips things into shape. I think they have a good group of dedicated people down there in that office.
Sure. Sure.
But it's overwhelming work sometime,
is.
and in a city such as ours, the petty stuff.
Right.
You got to prosecute every one of them. You can't let them slip because
Yeah.
we'll slip backwards. But it can really be a grind. And I don't forgive, but I can certainly understand how it is possible that we could get ourselves in this predicament. It's disappointing that it wasn't caught. There should be a structure in place of supervision so that these
oversight.
things get
Right.
caught before
Right.
the principal calls from the principal's office
Right.
and says you got to do something. That was embarrassing to the city.
Yeah. I mean, I think Chief Willard did the right thing. Obviously, I don't know how long this. Well, actually, I spoke with former Chief Mara, who
Himself
brought
was
it,
a prosecutor for the city.
and they
of
brought it,
Manchester.
and
knows the job.
and as a chief, he said he brought it to over about 2 years ago. He brought to the attention of the solicitor's office that, a lot of these domestic violence cases are being null pros, and I'm not comfortable with that. We have the evidence.
Well, we had something like that. I seem to remember with DWIs about 15 or 20 years ago, where people started to get wind that a lot of these DWIs were getting. Especially
Suspended
second,
or whatever.
second offenses where you're supposed to really, lose your
Okay, right,
license,
right,
and they were being downgraded to first offense, even though it was the second. There was a lot of lawyer shenanigans going on, that favored the people that were doing the crimes,
Right.
and that got caught, and basically prosecutors were told, you want to null pros a DWI, you got to send me a letter as to why you're doing it.
Exactly.
Something as simple as that.
Right,
And the practice virtually dried up because, when you have to
So,
explain
like I said,
yourself,
I'm anxious to get that. Solicitor's office is a very important office. I mean, we ask questions all the time. On,
and
on
they
what we
sit
can do.
they sit behind you at your public meetings. They sit
Exactly.
behind the zoning board. They sit behind the planning board. I know even our humble little Heritage Commission has asked questions of the solicitor's
Sure.
office.
Yeah,
and
it's a
they've been
very
great.
it's a very important department.
And I have to say, to their credit, there was one occasion where I actually got a call from the solicitor's office just to make sure that things were moving along and weren't being delayed.
Right.
You know, so
Yeah.
I mean, and that was proactive. I didn't ask for that. So, you know, they're good people. I don't want to badmouth anybody,
Right.
but we had a problem and we got to
No,
fix it.
that's right. That's right. And we were on that course to do that. So
Any ramifications to the individuals that were actually in that domestic violence department? Are they being moved around? Putting under
yeah, no, there's
any
no,
supervision or
I mean,
anything like that?
you know, Attorney Rice has hire and firing capabilities. She's going to be like the department head. You know, the charter is clear on what the mayor or the alderman can do to the underlings, and there's nothing we can do to the underlings. Actually, the mayor has control of the department head, and the alderman can't meddle into departments. So we can't say, you know, Joe Smith ought to be the one driving the
I think that's
the
a
truck.
good policy because I think
I do
we've seen
too.
over on the school board side what happens
I do
when
too.
when you have the board of directors talking about individuals.
No,
you know, that's
absolutely.
unseemly.
You know, the department head is responsible, and that was the same thing with the chief with shutting down this station. You know, the buck is going to stop with him, so I'm going to lean towards him on doing what he thinks he needs to do to not have to lay off you know, firefighters. So.
Well, it's kind of tough to be a department head for a major city like this if you're handcuffed and you can't do anything because you got 14 guys looking over your shoulder.
Well,
I mean, I think the
that's
way it's set
exactly
up
it.
right now, it's pretty efficient, seems to be working, not without problems, but the problems get usually caught and solved rather quickly. So,
I mean, department
it's-
heads are fantastic. You know, when it comes to issues, they're right on it. Every Friday, I go riding around looking for Box Springs mattresses, couches in my ward, and I call them up, and Monday they're picking them all up. You know, I mean, that's something they didn't schedule for next Monday. You know, now they know. Come Friday
Pat's gonna
afternoon,
be calling.
Pat Long's going to be calling with where are all my couches, and you know, but that's all important stuff. You know, that it's all about quality of life. I don't care where you live, it's about a quality of life, and even in the inner city, there's an expectancy of quality of life.
Well, for the city of Manchester, we've managed to maintain a very good quality of life despite challenges from all directions and every quarter. But I'm going to end where I started. Thanks to good men like C. Arthur Soucy and yourself,
Absolutely.
who put the time in to you know, to do the hard work that is it. You're not going to make $1 million doing this all day long. you
No,
know?
not at all. Not at all.
But you just all hands grabbing an oar, pulling in the same direction, and the city can move forward. And we need more of that, folks. If you out there ever had an inkling to get involved, join a board or commission, go on the city's website. There's plenty of places where you can really make a difference. Join a volunteer group, so many different organizations, or just contribute to New Horizons or any one of those organizations. There's so many things that you can do, and we need your help. The city really needs
bet.
more people to step up, I think. We're hanging on. Getting better.
Yeah.
You-
Hey, if I could just plug in something
Please
for
do. We got a
this,
couple minutes
this
before we
Saturday
go.
at 9:00. This Saturday at 9:00, it's the third Saturday in a row that they've been doing this. There's a group that's meeting at the Valley Cemetery, and we're cleaning it up, shrubbery, raking. So there's an interest with a group to clean it up, and this Saturday at 9:00 there'll be a group there.
And that's
I'll be down there
actually
also.
a very interesting way to spend some time, because not only are you contributing to the city, but that's a very historic cemetery.
Yeah,
there are
absolutely.
people in there.
Yeah.
There are just the art of the headstones in many cases is
Right.
extraordinary.
Right.
Very old, original cemetery in the city of Manchester.
Yeah.
Aside from some family ones, there are some Stark family members buried in that cemetery. Not to mention many under the luminaries. It's fun to go look at the headstones. So, yeah, if you can volunteer, go help out Alderman Long, help clean up the cemetery this Saturday. What time?
This Saturday, 9:00.
9:00 in the morning, right after your morning coffee. Perfect. Well, Alderman Long, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you
I
for
really
having me,
appreciate
Mike.
it. Folks, thank you for watching, even without Bob Backus, your genial host who is not here today. I appreciate your sticking around with us. We try to keep the show going. It is live TV, but the show must go on. We hope that you will join us next week on the Progress Report. Bob Backus will be back in the hosting chair. I'll be here with him. And we're going to be talking about another great volunteer project going on in the city of Manchester. The effort to reconstruct and rededicate the Kosciuszko statue in Kosciuszko Park up off Bridge Street. We're going to have two great people, two great history-minded people. Pat Howard and Aurora Eaton are going to come on.